Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Following the conclusion of yesterday's NBA draft, we are going through every team and talking about the impact that the draft had on their roster. So far, we've done 9 of the top 10 teams with the exception of the Golden State Warriors as we await the results of Klay Thompson's medical testing. And now we're talking about the 11th team, which is the San Antonio Spurs. Drafted Devin Vassell in the first round and Tre Jones in the second round. One of my favorite cumulative drafts of any team in the NBA. I think the Spurs did a great job of taking the best player available at both of these spots. So I'm really high on this draft for the Spurs. But before we get too far into it, I want to remind you to leave a like and subscribe. I've been cranking out really consistent draft coverage, and once trades and free agency get into the real swing of things this weekend, we'll be having lots of that too. So if you enjoy hearing about basketball talk, this is the place for you. Without further ado, let's get into the San Antonio Spurs. Devin Vassell, wing, who plays excellent defense and can space the floor on offense for you. The epitome of a 3-and-D wing. I see so many comparisons for Danny Green when I watch him play, and it just is the comparison that makes the most sense to me. The Spurs obviously were the team that Danny Green really stuck with and ended up making rapid improvements with and becoming the player that has such a huge impact on championship level teams that he is today. It's no coincidence that he has 3 rings and that 2 of the last 2 championship teams had him on their roster. Now, we'll see if the streak can continue with him in Philadelphia, but the Spurs have shown that they have a really good capability of producing good role players. Danny Green, we've seen it be very true. Obviously, Kawhi Leonard, Manu Ginobili, Tony Parker had much faster improvement, but even guys that they've drafted much more recently, DeJounte Murray, Lonnie Walker, Derek White, Keldon Johnson, Jakob Poeltl, not a guy they drafted, but a guy that they've developed after he came over in the Kawhi Leonard trade. Even guys like Drew Eubanks. Bryn Forbes is another one. All of these guys have really developed in the Spurs developmental system, and for that reason, I believe that this is a great place for Devin Vassell to be. He fits the roster as a really nice defensive option alongside the spectacular defensive backcourt of DeJounte Murray and Derek White. This team is going to be putting the clamps on people for years to come. A starting lineup of DeJounte Murray, Lonnie Walker, and then at the 3, or Derek White or Lonnie Walker. At the 3, you have Devin Vassell, and at the center, Jakob Poeltl, if they're able to retain him through restricted free agency this upcoming season. That's a lethal starting lineup on the defensive end of the floor. I would have liked it if the Spurs could have found their guy to trigger this rebuild around, because I don't really think that guy is currently on their roster. But that guy really wasn't there. I thought maybe it would be Patrick Williams or Obi Toppin or Isaac Okoro, but obviously all 3 of those guys went in the top 8, so they weren't available here. For me, this probably came down to either Vassell or Halliburton. I think both of those 2 guys were in the same tier when I did my NBA draft tiers. I think I had Halliburton 5th and Vassell 8th. So really, this could have been a toss-up, and in the end, they went with the guy that fit their roster better, and that was most definitely Devin Vassell. So I think this was the right pick for the Spurs. And I think that there's a chance that Vassell really develops in this Spurs system and becomes a really good starter level player with maybe the potential to, I would consider Danny Green like a top 60 player in the NBA. I think that Vassell certainly has a chance to get there as well. In the second round, they took Tre Jones, point guard out of Duke. I won't talk on him as extensively as I did on Vassell, but he is a floor general, can handle the ball, good playmaker for his teammates, really makes great decisions in the pick and roll, and has really developed as a catch-and-shoot guy who can space the floor. That's really important on the Spurs because they don't have a whole lot of three-point shooting. DeJounte Murray's iffy from range. Lonnie Walker's a sharpshooter. Derek White can shoot the ball really well. Keldon Johnson shot the ball insanely well in the bubble, but overall he's not a very good three-point shooter. Neither is DeMar DeRozan, neither is LaMarcus Aldridge. So adding a guy who can space the floor in Tre Jones is a good move for them. He hasn't been great at it as he only shot 36% this past season, but I believe that after seeing him take a huge jump in his shooting efficiency from his freshman year to sophomore year in college, he can take another jump. With him, he can become a starter level point guard at the NBA if he can develop a shot off of the bounce. I think that could make him really lethal in pick and rolls, as he already has a solid game getting to the rim and creating looks for his teammates, while also being a solid playmaker and finding the big man either on a roll or a pick and pop. But if he can develop that shot off the bounce, that will make defenders go over the top of that ball screen for him. That's where he can get really lethal. And I think that the Spurs are going to help develop him, and this is one of the most ideal spots for him to have gone in the second round. In this draft, the Spurs got two guys that I think were undervalued by a lot of NBA teams and should have gone higher than they did, and then the Spurs just kind of sat where they were, didn't get involved with trading up rumors, and took the best guy available, and I think that they need to be applauded for that. Overall on the roster, this team is really deep. There's like 12 guys that I think are worthy of being in an NBA rotation next year. At the point guard, they have DeJounte Murray, Patty Mills, and Trey Jones. At the wing positions, well, I guess you can even throw in Derek White at the point guard spot if you consider him a point guard. On the wing, you have Lonnie Walker, DeMar DeRozan, Keldon Johnson, Rudy Gay, the guy they just drafted, Devin Vassell. If they bring back Marco Bellinelli or bring Bryn Forbes, which I don't think they should, then those guys could also be thrown in on the wing. At the big man positions, you've got LaMarcus Aldridge. Trey Lyles and Tyler Zeller are both on non-guarantees, so I'm not sure if they'll be back, but Chimezie Metu and Lukas Samanic both look like guys that you're going to want to give minutes to and could potentially develop into NBA rotation players. Drew Eubanks was a guy that I really enjoyed watching in the bubble last year due to his absolute feel for the defensive end of the floor and good rebounding ability, offensive rebounding on the offensive end. He is able to contribute in that fashion on offense. I don't know how much else he's going to be able to do, but if he can develop a three-point shot and become a solid playmaker out of the pick and roll, out of the short roll, I think that there's a chance that he is a guy who sticks in the NBA. For that reason, I'm glad the Spurs extended their qualifying offer to Drew Eubanks, and I hope that they can keep him around. Quinndary Weatherspoon was the other two-way player for the Spurs this past season. I believe they gave him the qualifying offer, but I'm not absolutely certain on that, and I don't really know much about his game overall, so I won't talk much about him. Bryn Forbes and Marco Bellinelli are two guys I think they need to let walk. They already have a crowded enough guard rotation with Murray, Mills, Walker, White, Johnson, and Jones, so I don't think they need to worry about either of those two guys. And Jakob Poeltl and Drew Eubanks, the two big men that are restricted, are the ones that I would really be focused on bringing back. Poeltl just brings such a different element to this team on the defensive end of the floor, and I think that he can be their center for the future, and at worst, a stopgap center type player, giving him something close to the mid-level, maybe between $8 and $12 million annually for like a 3-year deal would be solid for me, and that would make a lot of sense, both for Poeltl and for the Spurs. And they have to keep these young guys in-house because I think that this team can be really entertaining with all the young talent they have, and they also have a chance to continue to improve and be back in the playoffs within the next 2 to 3 seasons. I think that this team, with the roster they currently have assembled, is probably somewhere between a 33 to 36 win team in the NBA. I can't pick the Spurs to lose 50 games, but I also am not confident to pick them to win 40 plus. I think they'll probably finish around the 11th or 12th seed in the Western Conference, which is still an achievement. Oh, well, I guess there's only 72-game seasons. So whatever the 72-game season equivalent is of 33 wins. Shoot! I've been saying that in every video, saying my win projection for every team, but it's a 72-game season, not an 82-game season. So I guess you can probably take 4 wins off the board for them there. So like a 29 to 32 win team is what I see for this Spurs. If they can continue to develop, like I said, they can make the playoffs within the next couple years, and what they really need to be focused on is finding the guy they're rebuilding around. I don't think that DeJounte Murray's the guy. I don't think that Devin Vassell is that guy, so that really needs to be their focus, and if something comes up where they can get a young star for a not unreasonable price, I think that'd be something I would certainly look at. A deal that I have some interest in, if I were them, would be a swap of some of their young players that could really help out the Nuggets in their rotation for Michael Porter Jr. I don't think the Nuggets would probably want to do that because they really seem to like Porter, but it would make sense for both sides as it could help the Nuggets get some really good rotation level players that are still young and have a chance to develop and get the Spurs their star of the future. But I'm probably dreaming there, and it doesn't make a whole lot of sense, but definitely something I would consider for both sides. Overall, I love what the Spurs did in this draft. I think Vassell was a solid pick, and I think Jones was one of the steals of the draft, and I'm super happy that they took him when they did. Actually, I'm not super happy they took him when they did. The Bucks only picked 4 spots after, and I would have loved to have Trey Jones, although I am very happy with our compensatory pick of Jordan Nora, getting him instead of Trey Jones. I mean, it's maybe better for the Bucks since he can space the floor from the wing, but we'll talk about the Bucks later. I will make a whole video talking about my favorite team and how sad I am that Bogdan Bogdanovic will not be joining us next year. Sorry, Spurs fans, you probably didn't want to listen to this at the end of your video, but it just happens sometimes. I love the Bucks. Leave a like and subscribe if you enjoyed. Leave a comment on what you think the Spurs should have done. Did they do the right thing? Did they do the wrong thing? But let me know what your opinion is. Don't let me persuade you. I think that's going to be it for me, ladies and gentlemen. I'll see you all again very soon.